Welcome back, students of Elevated Success. I'm going to show you how to fill out the Commercial General Liability Accord form, which is an Accord 126. You'll start just like any other application. You're going to start with the date, which would be today's date, your agency name up at the top. Since there's no policy, you don't need to fill out a policy. You really don't even need to fill out the effective date either. You just need to fill out the applicant's name, or the first named insured. For this example, we're using ABC Pizza LLC. Next, you're going to move to coverages. So this is a commercial general liability. You're going to want to list whether you're trying to quote an occurrence-based or claims-made general liability policy, which we've learned in the class. You'll also want to list whether or not you have any deductibles, the property damage or bodily injury deductible, if you're going to want to quote with those. Usually I leave these blank. If the underwriter will determine if the pricing is better with those, then they'll add them. Unless you're doing a renewal quote. So say this person has been in business for 5 years and they're a new prospect to me, but they're trying to get a better price on their policy. If they already have that, I'm going to quote it the same way. You'll want to click whether it's per claim or per occurrence. It's very important if they know if it's per claim, because that means if there's more than one claimant, they would have to pay $500 for each claimant. For example, I had a claim one time where there was an amusement park and a painter came and they were spraying the roller coasters, and the overspray went over about 500 cars. They had $1,000 deductible per claim. They actually went out of business. They could not afford that claim. So that's very, very important. I would always want to choose per occurrence, but if you choose per claim, it's very important to let the insured know, depending on the type of business that they have, how that works. In this example, it's a pizza restaurant. Most likely, they're not going to have more than one claimant for the same type of claim. It would probably be per occurrence, unless maybe there was a puddle and 2 people slipped in it, more than one person slipped in it. But more than likely, they would not have something like I just described as the painting company had. Next, you'll want to go to limits. So you'll want general aggregate limit here, and whether it applies per location, per project, per policy. Usually it's per policy. Products completed aggregate, personal advertising limit, each occurrence, damage rented premise, medical expenses. So all the coverages you'll list here. Employee benefits if they have it, and if they have an additional one, say maybe liquor liability or something else, you'll want to list that here. Any other coverage, restrictions, endorsements, you'll want to list that here. I usually don't have anything to add. They could have the non-owned auto you're trying to get as well. If you're in Wisconsin and there is non-owned auto coverage is to be under this policy, you do need to click these buttons whether UIM coverage is or is not available, and same with medical payments coverage. For any other state, you don't need to even fill this out. Next, you'll want to go to Schedule of Hazards. If you have more than these 3 and you want to make sure that you are listing every single risk that they are doing, under the Schedule of Hazards, you'll want to have an Accord 211 if there's more than one. So for each type of operation that they're doing, you're going to want to list that here. So it's very important to know exactly what your company, your insured, is doing. So for example, you may have a janitorial company that cleans inside of commercial buildings, but in addition, they do pressure washing. So pressure washing would also need to be listed here as another hazard with another class code, and all the exposure information listed here as well. So for this one, they have one location. If you have multiple locations, you would want to list the hazard for each location, or you want to list multiple hazards per location. So you may have like one location and have 3 hazards. you would want to list, location 1, hazard 1, location 1, hazard 2, etc. If there was more than one location, you would want location 1, hazard 1, location 2, hazard 2. So hopefully you get the gist. You would want to list the class code for each risk that they have, and then the premium basis. Down here under rating and premium basis, it gives you an explanation of what each of these mean. So it could be gross sales, payroll, area. This one actually, depending on the company, may be under area. And then total cost, admissions, that would be for ticket sales, per unit, that would be if they're, selling products. So depending on what type of business they have, usually it's gross sales, sometimes it's payroll, especially in construction. And so you just need to list what that premium basis is and what that exposure is. For this, I'm using sales at $250,000. And then you're going to want to list the classification description here. Next, under claims made, if it is a claims made, you'll want to answer these questions. The most important one is the retroactive date. You're going to want that. And then any of these additional questions, if you have an explanation, if you have click yes, you do want to list the explanation underneath. Employment liability benefits, that would be here. You would want to list all this information here as well. Contractors, if there are contractors, it's important to answer these questions, and you can go through and read each one. If there's subcontractors allowed, it's really important that they do provide a certificate of insurance. But if they are not, you're going to need to put that they do not and then explain why. Most of the times they do not allow their subcontractors to work without providing a certificate of insurance. They need to be insured on their own. If they're not, it can be very, very expensive. Even on an audit, it can be very expensive if they don't have that. Does the applicant lease equipment to others with or without operators? Answer that question here, and then describe the type of work subcontracted. So the amount paid, the percentage contracted, and the full-time and part-time staff. That's very important if they're using subs. For completed operations, so you would want all of the product information listed here. Product, the annual sales, the number of units, time and market, expected life, intended use. You'll want to answer these questions down here. Whether or not they demonstrate products, foreign products sold and distributed. This is going to be important to answer. If it's answered yes, you're going to want to fill out an Accord 815 and answer those questions. Usually I don't have any of this, but if you do, you want to make sure research development conducted on new products. Warranties, if they have any warranties, hold harmless agreements, you're going to want to attach that as well. Get a copy and attach that to the quote that you're sending to the underwriter. If it's related to airspace, any recalled products, products under the labels of others, all of that's important to be answered. Here, if you have an additional insured who needs to be listed as a certificate holder, you'd want to list them here. General information, you're always going to fill this out. The other parts you may not have to, that I had no answers on, but the general information, these all have to be answered, and some of them don't even really apply. Like any medical facilities provided, this one is almost always no. Same with number 2 is almost always no. If they're disposing of hazard material, you'll need to list that. If they've sold or acquired any discontinued in the last 5 years, you'll need to list it here. If they rent equipment to others, they're going to want to know that information about the equipment and whether or not instruction is given. If they have any watercraft or docks, you'll need to list that here. Parking facilities owned or rented, that's usually no. If they do, whether or not a fee is charged for that parking. Recreational facilities provided, usually with HOAs. You may see that here. and you'll want an explanation what that is. Are there any lodging operations including apartments? So you'll want the number of apartment square feet and a description of what that lodging operations is. The swimming pool, make sure you answer all these questions. Social events sponsored, another one, almost always no. Athletic teams, almost always no. Structural alterations, that's going to be important if you're doing a commercial property, as well as demolition. They most likely are not going to qualify for any type of liability at that point. The rest of these questions, if they're active in any joint ventures, whether or not they lease employees from other employers, this is important. Remember, we talked about this in our work comp class. So very important information here if they lease employees to or from other employers. And then all these other questions, whether there's daycare facility, any crimes occurred, safety, security, operation in effect, these are all important to answer. Usually they're almost always no. And then at the very bottom, once you've completed all of it, you'll again get your signature and the applicant's signature. When you send it in to bind, you'll want your producer name, your producer license number, and the national producer number to be sent in with any quote. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can find us online at www.elevatedsuccessonline.com, and you can also reach me by email at info@elevatedsuccessonline.com. Thank you so much.